Have you ever done something just for you and then immediately felt guilty afterwards? If so, this episode is for you. That little voice whispering inside your head that you're being selfish for wanting more, whether it's a career, a passion project, or simply just taking time for yourself. Yeah, we're shutting that down because the truth is, you're allowed to want more. And it doesn't make you a bad mom. And if you're not a mom, wait a second before you reach for the skip button. This isn't just about motherhood. If you struggle with feeling guilty for putting yourself first, stick around. We're diving into where this guilt comes from, why it's total nonsense, and how to let go so you can chase your dreams guilt free. Welcome to Growing Wild, the podcast where creativity meets confidence and marketing meets mindset. I'm Jamie Cole, marketer by trade, dreamer by heart, and your host on this journey to figuring it all out together. Because let's be real, building a brand and a life that you love takes more than just strategy. It takes courage. If you're ready to finally do that thing that you've been dreaming of, launch the business, grow your brand, or just make space for you, I got you. We're talking marketing tips that actually make sense, mindset shifts that get you out of your own way, and how to fully embrace who you are without apologizing. So grab your coffee, shot of tequila, or whatever keeps you sane, and let's grow. You know, this guilt that we feel, it doesn't just appear out of nowhere. It's something that we've been conditioned to feel, whether we realize it or not. And a big part of that conditioning comes from these three little things: societal expectations, our own internal pressure, and the lovely little game of comparison culture. We all wrestle with this internal tug of war between being responsible and being fulfilled. So let's start with societal expectations because they run deep. There's this long standing, unspoken, and actually sometimes very loudly spoken narrative that the best women, especially moms, but also teachers, partners, community builders, you name it, are the ones who completely are selfless. The ones who pour themselves out for everyone else, who never complain, who always show up, who sacrifice without blinking. If you dare to say, actually, I need time to focus on myself, suddenly it feels like you're stepping out of line, like you're not being grateful or humble or nurturing enough. I remember one time after returning from work, full time after having my first baby, I said out loud, I miss being at work and I miss that creative part of my brain. And somebody actually said to me, but isn't motherhood the most important job that you'll ever have? Well, yeah, of course. It's important, but that doesn't mean I stop being who I am, a whole person with desires and strengths. And listen, it starts even before you have kids. The moment that you announce that you're pregnant, people start making comments like, oh, your whole world is about to change. Say goodbye to sleep. Your life is about to revolve around that baby. And listen, yes, kids are life changing. But somewhere along the way, it's like we absorbed this idea that we're only allowed to exist as a mom. Like the second you step outside of that role, whether to go after a career, pursue a creative passion, or just sit alone in peace, it's almost like you're breaking some sacred rule. Even now, when I go work on my business late at night after my kids go to bed, and the internal Karen in my head is like, oh, wow, how could you take the time away from your family like that? And then I'm like, ma'am, my children are literally asleep right now. But still, the guilt creeps in. It's this idea that unless every moment is spent directly engaged with our kids, we're somehow falling short and we're failing them. But let's be real, kids don't need us to be their constant entertainment. They need us to be fulfilled and present and human. And that applies to whether you're raising babies, building a business, or just trying to rediscover who you are. There's this pressure to be all in on everyone else. And it can make you feel wrong or selfish when you just want a little bit of space to grow. But here's the thing, even when no one is actually saying these things to us, we still manage to put this insane amount of pressure on ourselves. Sometimes the worst judgment isn't coming from the outside, it's coming from the inside, in our own heads. Like maybe your to do list never ends, or your brain says you should be productive every second of the day, even when your body is screaming for some rest. Maybe you finally carve out an hour to work on your hobby or a new business idea, or just sit in a coffee shop alone. And the whole time you're battling this low level hum of guilt in your head. I can't tell you how many times I've had a full on debate with myself over something so simple as taking an hour to work out or sitting down with a book instead of folding the laundry. It's like, should I be doing this? Am I neglecting something? Are my kids going to remember that this one moment in time I abandoned them? No, they will not. I remember this one Saturday morning when I was trying to work on some project and my kids were watching a movie. And the entire time, I was physically uncomfortable with myself because I felt like I should be doing something with them. Even though they were perfectly fine and happily watching Encanto for the 47th time, I was convinced I was somehow being a bad mom for working instead of sitting next to them and reciting every single word of We Don't Talk About Bruno. And honestly, that is exhausting. Mental gymnastics that we put ourselves through are wild. But the reality is, being a good mom isn't about sacrificing every second of your time. It's about being intentional with your time. It's like we carry around this invisible rule book of how we're supposed to show up for everyone. And when we prioritize ourselves for even a little bit, it feels like we're breaking some unwritten rule. And as if the expectations and self imposed pressure weren't enough, social media makes it so easy to feel like we're falling behind. We're doing life all wrong. Whether you're looking at moms who are homeschooling and meal prepping for an entire army, or the entrepreneur that seems to have the perfect brand and balance and everything's all put together, or, that friend who somehow always looks rested and motivated, it's hard not to compare. I've scrolled through those perfect mom Instagram accounts countless times. You know the ones. She's making organic bento box lunches with little star shaped cucumbers. She's out here running a six-figure business while breastfeeding. She's over here homeschooling five kids who are all wearing matching linen outfits. I see them out here crushing it online while I'm over here in a hoodie, microwaving dino nuggets on my third cup of coffee, trying to remember the last time I had a full conversation without checking my email mid sentence. But what we don't see are all the messy in between moments, the behind the scenes support, or the fact that nobody, literally nobody, has it all figured out. And yet, we compare ourselves anyway. We think, why can't I do all that? Why don't I have it all together like she does? But here's the truth, nobody has it all together. And chasing some unrealistic standard will only leave us exhausted, overwhelmed, and just stuck in a cycle of guilt. So, wherever your guilt is coming from, whether it's what society told you, what you're telling yourself, or what you think you're supposed to be doing based on someone else's highlight reel, I want you to remember this. Wanting more for yourself doesn't make you selfish, it makes you human. You're allowed to want a life that excites you. You're allowed to rest. You're allowed to dream big. And you're allowed to change your mind. You're allowed to start something new. And when you do, Don't become less of a caregiver or less of a friend or a partner or a parent. You become more of the version of yourself that you always were meant to be. When you allow yourself to grow, you chase your passions. And to create a life that excites you, you're not just benefiting yourself, you're setting an example for your kids. You're showing them that it's okay to have dreams, to take up space, and to prioritize their own happiness. So the next time that guilt starts creeping in, take a deep breath and remind yourself you are allowed to want more. And you don't have to feel bad about it because ambition gets a bad rap, especially when you're a mom. It's often painted as this selfish, hustle at all costs, cold corporate energy. But that's not what we're doing here. We're talking about the kind of ambition that is rooted in purpose, creativity, passion, the kind that fuels you and makes you feel alive. And if you're a parent, especially a mom, that kind of ambition is gold. Let me tell you why. I'll start with something that shifted everything for me, realizing that my kids are watching me and not just what I do for them, but what I do for myself. There was this one night I was sitting at the kitchen table editing an episode of the podcast, and my daughter came over and she heard my voice and she said, "That's you, Mom. I hear you talking on the computer." And I said, "Yeah, I'm making a podcast episode." And she just smiled and said, "I like your podcast, Mom. Can I hear it when it's done?" And that moment stopped me in my tracks because here I was feeling guilty for not doing the laundry or planning an activity or making a Pinterest worthy dinner. And she saw me doing something that I loved. And I just felt proud. She doesn't even know what a podcast is. They're watching us. They learn from what we do and not just from what we say. And when they see us pursuing our goals and being passionate about something, even if we're struggling through the hardest parts and we're still showing up, we're teaching them resilience. We're teaching them self worth and that it's okay to want things. And this doesn't just apply to moms. If you're in any role where there are people that are looking to you, siblings, students, coworkers, your own inner circle, how you treat your ambition gives other people permission to embrace themselves. Here's the other thing that I've learned. When I make time for the things that matter to me, I show up better for the people that I love. Seriously, I am a much more patient mom after I've had some time to create, to work on my podcast, to move my body, or even just to sit in silence and drink a cup of coffee. The days when I try to pour from an empty cup, when I push my needs in the name of being available, those are the days when I snap, when I'm drained, when I feel like I've lost myself in all the chaos of the world. Fulfillment isn't a luxury, it's a necessity to be the version of me that I want to bring to motherhood, relationships, and life in general. And honestly, that applies whether you're raising babies or not. We're all more grounded, more present, and more whole when we're not abandoning ourselves, just in the name of being enough for everyone else. Let's talk about balance for a second, because the version we've been sold, it's a myth. Balance isn't about giving everything equal time. I mean, who even made that up? There was a time that I thought that I had to divide my days into these perfect little slices, equal parts for work, family, self care, and rest. That's not even real. That's just another pressure trap. True balance for me looks different every single day. Sometimes it's a late night working because I'm in a creative flow. Sometimes it's choosing to let the dishes sit so I can go for a walk or play with the kids. And sometimes it's doing the work that lights me up, even if it means dino nuggets for dinner again. Balance is about being intentional, not perfect. It's about knowing what matters most right now and making peace with the fact that life moves in seasons. Some seasons are heavy on the hustle, while others are made for slowing down. So when we shift that mindset from I'm taking a time away from my family or I should be doing more to something like I'm growing into the person that I want to be, everything changes. Because here's the truth, you don't have to earn your right to want more. Wanting more isn't a betrayal of your role, it's a commitment to your wholeness. And that wholeness, that's something that your kids, your people, most importantly, you get to benefit from. So, yeah, when we let go of that old idea that ambition pulls us away from who we're supposed to be and instead recognize that it pulls us closer to who we truly are, we start to see things differently. But I know, even with all this awareness, that guilt, it still sneaks in. So let's talk about what it really takes to let go of the guilt. And listen, it's not magically going to go away overnight, but rather with small, intentional choices that we can start making today. I think the first step is simply getting curious about the guilt instead of immediately believing it. Like, where is this actually coming from? We got to stop and think for a second before we react. I know, easier said than done. But let's start with these questions. Is it something that someone has said to you? Is it your own inner perfectionist whispering that you're not doing enough? Is it social media or that one overly vocal family member who always has thoughts about your life? I've had to literally pause in the middle of a spiral and ask myself, who came up with this rule? Like this one time, I let my kids watch their tablet a little extra long so I could get some work done on a project. Later on, I felt horrible, like I had to make it up to them by overcompensating with home cooked meals and craft time. Like, who made up that rule? No one. I did. Getting honest about where the guilt is rooted helps you start to unpack it rather than just carrying it around like a scarlet letter. Once you can identify where that guilt is coming from, you can start to replace it with something truer, something that actually supports the life that you want to live. Instead of, I should be spending more time with my family, try, I'm showing what it looks like to follow your dreams and still show up with love. Instead of, I shouldn't take this much time for me, say, rest and creativity are part of what makes me strong, not signs of weakness. You're not lying to yourself when you say these things. You're just telling a better truth, one that honors the full version of who you are, not just the version that serves others. So let's redefine what it actually means to be a good mom, a good partner, and a good human. It's not about doing all of the things. It's not about sacrificing every part of yourself. It's not about perfectionism. Being good can look like taking a break when you're overstimulated instead of snapping at your kid. It can look like ordering takeout and choosing to sit down with your family instead of scrambling around the kitchen trying to make a home cooked meal. It can look like carving out an hour to build your dreams, even if the laundry pile is giving you the side eye. The guilt loves to show up when things aren't ideal. But what if we just stop aiming for ideal and started honoring real? And let's not underestimate the power of community. Find your people, the ones who get it, the ones who cheer for you when you set boundaries, who celebrate your creative wins, who remind you that your dreams are valid and that you're doing a good job. Whether that's your husband, other moms, business friends, online connections, or that one solid bestie, you need people who reflect the truth back to you. And for everyone else who doesn't get it, you don't owe them an explanation. Not everyone's going to understand your path, and that's okay. You weren't made to fit into someone else's version of what life should be like. Releasing guilt isn't something that you check off your list, it's something that you practice daily. There will still be moments where it creeps in because you're human, because you care. But now you'll start to catch it. You'll start to take a breath. You choose yourself on purpose. And each time that you do that, you'll feel a little more confident, a little more rooted, and a little more free. Because guilt might still visit from time to time, but it doesn't get to stay anymore. So here's what I want to leave you with today. Mom guilt and guilt in general is persistent, but it doesn't have to control you. You're allowed to want more. You're allowed to chase your dreams, and you're still amazing. So the next time that guilt creeps in, remind yourself you are showing your kids what it looks like to live fully. And that's a gift. Thanks for hanging out with me today. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. So come find me on Instagram at jamiecole.growingwild and let's keep the conversation going. And if this episode resonated with you, leave me a killer review or share it with someone who needs to hear it. And remember, you are allowed to want more. You are allowed to rest, to grow, to build something that excites you. That desire doesn't make you any less of a mom, it makes you whole. And when you show up whole, everyone around you benefits, especially the ones that you love the most. Until next time, stay wild.